Hey, hi, how's it going? It's Janice from Le Rue de Fleur. Welcome back into the studio today. I am going to do a little whip. So you know that Tackle That Whip is part of my 2026 goal is to get stuff out of that cupboard down there and out into the world for sale or for use or whatever. So I found a project that's perfect for Valentine's Day. So I know February we're doing four patch February, so I'm trying to do a bunch of four patch ideas. But I found this little pot holder that turns into a heart that I pre-cut, and I have that pattern for you for sale, and I will link that down below if you're interested in making this. But I already have it like cut and partially pieced. So I have all of the strips made with the little corners. I have the tabs made. I have my binding ready to go. I even did the pockets so they have like an inner facing inside of them, and it makes it nice for your hand to go in there. I have those all done, and I have my backing pieces. The only thing I need to do is put together the top and put some Insulbrite behind it. So I like to use Insulbrite. I will show that to you. It is a batting that has a special heat reflective coating on it. So it's perfect for doing things like pot holders or oven mitts because it allows you to have that heat reflective blocking, but it's not super bulky. So when you're going to grab things, you don't have all of that fabric in your way. So if you'd like to make pot holders or oven mitts, which are great gifts and just great household staples, then I definitely would recommend that. So I will link a source for that below if you're not really sure what that material is either. But I am going to grab some Insulbrite, flip you around the top, and then we're just gonna throw these things together. This is kind of like a little bonus video this month. So I hope you enjoy it. All right. Okay, so here is the Insulbrite. I think you can see what I mean right now. It is I've got this like little sparkly heat reflective, but then it's like a fleecy material there on the back. And I am going to be just super fast today, and I'm not really even going to measure that well. I'm just gonna take my backing pieces and I'm just gonna lay it on. I need two, so I have it folded in half. And then I'm just going to go ahead and really quickly use my backing as my pattern here. And I'm just going to slice off what I need. And I'm not even going to worry about these raggy edges because I'll just trim it up after I do my piecing. So that's another really quick way to just get something done. Okay, now that I have all my pieces ready to go, I have to remember how to lay out my strips that I made. And I could reference and I probably should reference my pattern, but I'm gonna see if I can figure it out. And I have enough to do two, and I'm gonna have to take them over and press them. But they go like this. Hopefully I'm in frame. Yes, okay. So really simple. You're just making some strips, and we are just cropping those edges. See how it looks like a heart already? If it was pressed out, it would be even better. I'm gonna take it over and press it because that's very annoying. But you can see I have it here. I have them laid out, so I'm just going to press them and then flip those pieces over top of each other and sew it all together. So the hardest part about making this is just docking those corners and doing that correctly so that it is the opposite mirror direction of one another from that center line. See how they're mirrored? And that was the hardest part, but I think it's really cute. Anyway, I'm gonna go press it, come back, and we'll strip piece those all together. Okay, so I am just going to lay my first strip on top of the other one. I think I will actually pin because I do want it to line up so I get that nice crisp shape. Why is it attached? Okay. So I am going to pin the ends so that it doesn't shift and I get those nice crisp corners on my piece where I want my design to show. Okay, and then I am just going to sew it together with a 1/4 inch seam, back stitching at the top. Please forgive my machine, its squeakiness. I think it needs a little oil. But the guy that used to do my machine maintenance retired, so I don't actually know where to take my machine anymore. So that is a problem that needs solving. I am going to help with my daughter's musical costumes this weekend, and there's another woman that quilts and sews a lot there, so I think I will ask her where she takes her machine, and hopefully it won't be too far away. I guess it's like a dyeing craft. Maybe that would be a good business idea if you needed another business idea. Sewing machine maintenance. Okay, so there are my 2 strips, my one side, and then we'll open it up, and we've got the other side, and now all that's left is to piece those 2 pieces together. Trying to get the point to be pretty crisp there. So that's where I'm going to put my pen, because I want my point to be really crisp. And then I'm going to sew that. And then that's one top done. Weird fuzzy. Okay. So there is my first heart top finished. I'm gonna go give that a little press, and then I'm gonna jump on here. I'm just gonna finish these off camera, and then we will move on to the next part. Okay, so I've gone ahead and given a little bit of a press to those backing pieces, and I have this heat reflective. I have my backing on here, and now I am going to stick my heart on top, and we're just going to quilt that any way that you want. I think I'm going to change my machine thread to like a mint green if I have it, or maybe like a light pink. I'm going to go see what I have over there that already has a bobbin wound, because I don't want to do that. And then I'm just going to quilt it as regular. You can see there's a little bit of extra around the outside, so that if it shifts a little bit while we're quilting, that we still have the batting and the backing and everything all covered. I'm just going to do really simple lines down following the shape of this. You could outline the heart if you prefer, whatever you want to do. And do notice that I did take a little care to choose which direction my backing fabric is, just because this is a big print back here, and some of it's going to get covered up by the pocket. So I wanted to make sure that I had a rose peeking out, not the stems at the bottom, right? So I did take a little bit of a minute to think about what it would look like once the pocket backing was on. So you might want to consider that depending on the scale of your print. Like something like this, if I had chosen that for the backing, which might have been a better choice, but I didn't, so whatever. You know, then I wouldn't have to worry about it. But if you choose a larger scale print, then you might want to take a look and see what would be covered up and what would show, just so you can have it make the most sense and be the most appealing to your eye. So I'm going to pop a few pins in here just so it doesn't shift too much, and because I don't have like a ton of wiggle room on either side, but I hate cutting stuff and just wasting it. And for these little guys, it shouldn't shift too much. So I'm just going to throw a few pins in, and then yeah, go find a coordinating color thread that I want, and I'm just sticking the pins where I'm not going to sew, so I don't have to move anything out of my way. That makes life so much easier. And then I will just throw a few stripes of quilting down through the front. You need your Insel Bright with the reflective side facing out, so the heart is the out. When you stick your hand in the pocket, because the pocket will be back here, you want the inner facing reflective stuff to be facing away from your hand. That pushes the heat back towards the source. and not into your hand. And then the regular piece of batting would be back here. You could also add an extra batting layer in this if you wanted to and you don't mind the bulk, and if your hands are really sensitive, you might want to do that, but I find this is enough. And then the backing is going on the back, so that's touching the non-reflective side. All right, so let me grab some thread and pin my other one, and then we'll get this quilted up. Okay, to prepare them for adding the pocket, I just need to trim around the sides of my little pot holder here. So I'm going to use my grid ruler, and I'm just going to line up on a seam and my sewing lines to get it straight. I don't know if you can see that great, so hold on. See how I have a little bit that's wiggled off of the side here, but I am lining up my grid ruler with some seams that are straight and these seams here. So I'm using that and getting as close to the edge as I can, and then I'm going to trim off anything that hangs off of that side. Okay, so that's what I'm doing there. I'll put you back so I can actually trim it. Okay. And then going this direction, I will do the same thing, just obviously I am going perpendicular this time instead of parallel. I'm sorry, I can't, need to concentrate. I'm looking for those lines so that I'm cutting straight and I'm squaring it up and I'm not making it worse or more crooked looking. It really didn't shift much, but you do get a little bit of compression from your foot pushing the machine, or pushing the fabric through the machine, and that's kind of what distorts it a little bit. So that's totally normal, and it happens all the time, and that's why we just always say to trim up your blocks. After you're done, and that's why we leave a little bit of room around the outside when we're quilting so that we can correct that. Okay, so here we've got it all, and it didn't quite get there, but you won't see that when we put the oh my gosh, the pocket, when we do the pocket, you won't see that. So it doesn't really matter. I could have cut this a little bit bigger. Maybe that would have been a better idea, but I hate I just have to throw that away. So I don't like throwing stuff away. But if that is something that would bother you, but it will get caught in our seams. So it really doesn't matter. And it's at the bottom of the pocket. It is like, let's see. It's like 1/8 of an inch. So that's definitely going to get caught in our seam work because we're going to do 1/4 inch. So we'll put the pocket on, and I'm going to base stitch that the whole way around with an 1/8 inch seam. So next you'll lay your pocket on, and I am going to, again, you can just do that, or I'm going to just trim this down. It's a little bit bigger. So I'm going to trim that 1/4 inch off so I can just line everything up. And then I'm going to pin pretty good around this. I think I'll actually use clips. And then I am going to do an 1/8 inch basting seam all the way around to hold the pocket where I want it. Okay, so let's trim this guy up quickly. So I'm just going to lay it off to one side and line those sides up really good. And then I'm going to use my ruler, and I'm just going to cut that to size so that it lines up on that side. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. All right, so I'm going to pin, baste this. I'm going to put clips around this to hold it in place. And then I'm going to sew all the way around so that it's held in place for when we do our binding and stuff next. Oh, and also at this point, I am going to do my tab. So I fold these in half. I have instructions for these, of course, how to do your own in the pattern that I'll link below for this. But then I just fold them so that it makes a little loop like that. And I just use my fingers. You can also press that. And then I'm just going to find my center seam here. So I'm putting it on. I'm looking for that center seam. You see where the center seam is there? And then I'm just putting them on either, I'm putting the tops of my tabs on either side of that. And that's where I'm going to pin it. And then I'm also going to do that 1/8 inch basting stitch there. Okay? So that is how I put the tab on, and then we'll be all basted and we'll be ready to do our binding. So I'm going to go ahead and do this to both of them and do that basting stitch, and then I'll pop back. Okay, it's all done, so you can see, oh, fuzzy, but you can see that it's got that basting stitch, the whole, oh no, let's pick that out. We'll fix that because we can't have that. But you can see we have this basting stitch that goes the whole way around everything. And that's a good reason to check, because like, that is sad that it caught my fabric there. But you know what? I'll just take those couple stitches out, fold it back, and tack it back down so that it's in the right spot and it's not going to get caught weirdly when we put the, oh, actually it might be fun like that. That's fine. Okay, so next step, I'm just going to leave that. It's fine. I was able to like fold it over the seam there, so I'm just going to leave that. Anyway, now I have my binding strips made. So this is 2.5 inch fabric. I fold it in half and press it, and then we're going to pop this on and just use a very standard binding method. You just want to make sure that your loop is facing in still at this point, and then on the final attachment on the sewing down of the other side of the stuff, we will make sure that it pops out, that it's going to pop out nicely, okay? But you just want to make sure that right now it's faced in this way, because if you do it like this, it's going to get crumpled up into your binding, and then you won't have a loop, and that will be really sad. So make sure that it's all facing down for now, and then it will pop up at the end once everything's all attached. So I'm just going to throw you overhead and do the binding really quickly, and then we're all done. So the important thing to note about the binding is that raw edge goes to raw edge. So my fold is here, and that's what's going to wrap over. I like to start on the back with the pocket because it blends in a little bit more back here, and then we will fold it over to the other side. So you need to leave a little bit of a tail that we're going to work with. So I bring it way up here almost to this corner on such a small piece, and then I'm going to go all the way. I'm going to leave like a gap here, and I'm going to start back here. And you'll understand why when we fold it to complete it, because we're going to make it go at a little diagonal so that there's not a bunch of bulk in our binding. So I'm going to go all the way down in here and back stitch into the corner, leaving a 1/4 inch, and then we'll fold it up and turn it so that we have a continuous line here, and we get a nice mitered edge. Okay, so see I've come down into that corner. I have a big long tail up here. I'm going to turn my fabric and come straight up, lining up the edge of my binding strip with the raw edge of my pot holder. See how I have that little triangle? Okay, and then I'm going to flip this back down so that I have this triangle pocket here. See my little pocket? And now this edge is turned and it's lining up this way. And I'm gonna throw a pin in there to hold everything in place. And now I'm going to start sewing here. And I'm gonna do the same thing when I get to the other corner and all the way around. Okay, so I have sewn all the way around, and now you can see I've left this big gap where my one piece of binding has just rounded the corner, and I have this tail. And we are going to overlap them like this. So I'm going to lay one, hold on. Okay, that felt like a better angle. So I am laying the tail, the big long tail. The last piece that I attached is going right along the raw edge as if I were going to continue sewing down here. But I'm not going to. So I'm going to turn that up, and I'm going to take the tail that I started with and lay it over top. Okay? So they're laying flat against each other along the edge. So everything's lining up down here. See, I have layer, layer, actual piece. Now I'm going to take my scissors and I am going to come down here a couple of inches, so maybe like 2-ish inches. I don't know, I just eyeball it. And I'm going to use my scissors to make a tiny little notch back here. Not a big notch, just a little notch. Okay, can you see that? So I've cut a tiny little notch through all of those layers of my batting strip. See all the little layers? Okay, now I'm going to take the top piece and I'm going to cut it off right on that line. So I'm folding it over, lining up all of the edges, and then I'm going to cut through where my notch was so that I have this piece. Okay? Now I take the little piece that I cut off, and it is the width of my whole batting, or my whole binding strip, and I'm going to line it up with the one corner, with the one edge here at this little notch, and the rest of it laying across my binding strip heading toward the direction of completion here. And I'm going to cut on the outside of this all of the extra binding away. Okay, now I open up that piece, and you see my notches there? Can you see my notches? Okay, so I'm gonna open up that piece. It gets a little tricky because this isn't very big to work with, and I might actually rip the seam out of this a tiny bit because I need a little bit more room. Sometimes I have to do that, and that's okay because we just make adjustments as we go to get the result that we want. Okay, so it's fine. That's what seam rippers are for. No mistakes, just lessons learned. And then we are going to fold this whole thing over. So I need a little clippy to hold that up here, so I don't have to try to fold it and do this, okay? So it's going to hold together. So we're laying that together. That's right side up. We're taking this other piece, and we're lining up the corner on this one. Where's my notch? With the notch. See it here? So corner to corner. And you might need to put a pin in there because it's hard. Again, it's a little hard to manipulate. This is the hardest part. This is like the struggliest part here. Struggliest, yep. Okay, so we're going to line those up. I'm going to throw a clip in up here. So we want all of our corners to line up, okay? So this corner, right sides together, is at the notch, and then this corner is over here at this corner. And so we've created a little V that we're going to sew down. So we're going to sew on that diagonal. Can you see it? From this notchy corner down here to this guy back here. Okay, so sew down that V. Okay, and then just to finish it, we have to finish sewing down along there, and that's it. Pretty easy. So I'm going to do that quickly. I'm just starting where I stopped, and I'm just going to go straight across. And finish where I was on the other side so that the entire thing is sewn down. Now we're going to roll it over to the other side. So just use your fingers and flip it over. And I like to sometimes take it over to my machine and press, or take it over to my iron and press this so I get a really nice crisp look. So I'm going to do that first, but you just flip everything over and just use your fingers and pop the seam to the other side. Okay, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how we're going to tuck all those miters. Okay, so now I have my corners folded together. You can see here my corner is lined up with that notch, and those are right sides together, and then the opposite corners are lined up here, and I've put a clip just to hold it in place. And now I am going to sew across this diagonal line. So as you work, just make sure that there's no folds in your fabric and that end to end. So this is staying lined up here, and then this is going to come down and be lined up down here on the diagonal. Now you could draw a line through this if that helps, but since it's such a short distance, I'm just going to place it on my machine and just eyeball it. You can also get really cool invention, which is like little tape that you can put so you can see the 1/4 inch seam the whole way down the deck of your machine, which I should really get that because that would be wonderful and you wouldn't have to draw all the time. But I'm just going to pop it on my machine and sew that diagonal, making sure that there's no wrinkles in your fabric, which is a little tricky, but again, you're just going to stop and manipulate things as you go. So I'm putting that corner up underneath my foot, and I am going to drop it really quickly and then move my pin and take a second to smooth everything out while it's underneath of the presser foot. Okay, and then I'm sewing down that diagonal line. And I'm holding everything so it lines up. And I'm coming over to that line, and then I'm just going to back stitch there as well. And so you can see my diagonal there from edge to edge. And now we don't need this corner. I am just going to cut that off at a 1/4 inch, leaving a 1/4 inch past my seam. And when you open it, you'll see that it makes a continuous strip, and it eliminates all of that bulk there because it is spreading the fold of fabric where it would be bulky out over a much longer distance on the binding strip there. And so that's how I finish every one of my binding strips. That's how you can make binding strip, where all of that bulk is distributed instead of having a seam that runs up and down the whole way and then you have all those layers. These layers don't line up, so it's distributing that bulk. Okay, so that makes it finish nicer. Now we're just going to pop it back on the machine and close up this open part of our binding here. So we got to close that up, and then we're ready to finish it. Okay, so I have it pressed. Now we're going to use our fingers and fold one side flat down onto your quilted front. And I'm going to grab a pin, and I'm going to put my pin right there. And then I'm going to take this side. See how I have a little angle that's formed? And I'm going to bring that angle over. And I'm going to line it up in that corner. So sometimes you have to adjust them to get them to line up where you want them to, and that's fine. You know, like, it's fine. And it doesn't have to be perfect. If you have a tiny gap there, who cares? Okay, right? It's a potholder. And it's handmade. You're not a machine. It doesn't need to be perfect. We're making this by hand. And that is more important than perfection. Okay, so we're going to line that up, and I'm going to put a pin going the opposite way. Obviously, when you're sewing, you have to move those pins out of your way because we're going to go right along the inside of that guy to secure everything. Okay, so lay it flat, going one direction, use a pin, take this little angled piece, fold him back over, line him up. Scoot him up there till he lines up. Pop a pin. All right, now we're just going to sew all the way around and do all of the sides like that, and we will be all done. And this is the way I finish every quilt that I have binding on. So once you learn this, and that's why like a small project like this is great for starting, because you're learning the same technique, just in a smaller, like a little bit easier to manipulate, more quick win style format. But all the rules apply to any project that you would do then from here on out, where you would use the same techniques, right? So you would make any binding the same way that I just showed. So now you can do any project that you want and finish it off really nicely. I like to do the binding by machine. Some people hand sew that so you can't see the top stitching. And you could also do a decorative stitch along that edge as well. I think particularly for something like a pot holder, it doesn't need to be that fancy, right? It's more of a utilitarian item. But that's totally up to you how much time you want to put into something or what look you like. So you do you. And that's why you're making it for yourself, right? So that you can have it in the way that you want it. Now this time when I'm coming through with my sewing my binding on, I'm going to make sure to flip this guy up so I'm not catching it down here and making it even shorter, right? So if I sew it down and then I have an extra seam going across, it's going to be a really short little loop. So this time when I come by this section, I'm going to make sure that my loop is facing up the direction that I want, so that I get the full length and I'm not trapping it under an extra seam. Okay, so here we go. Let's sew this down. We're almost done. You notice I'm lifting the presser foot sometimes just so that my fabric lays flat. If it rolls up a little bit on the foot, I don't like that. It's a little bit easier for it to get caught. Okay, and there is my binding all the way around. You can see what it looks like from the back here. Really nice. And I'm just going to trim this little guy up and finish the other one, and then we're all done. And see how my loop hangs nice and freely? I can stick my hand in the pocket, and it's got that really satisfying sound that lets you know that your hand's going to be protected from that Insel Bright layer. All right, so the glamour shots are coming up next. Again, I have the pattern linked below if you'd like to make one of these yourself. It has all of the measurements and fabric requirements, and of course written instructions with the photographs in case you prefer that. But thank you for joining me today. I hope that this inspired you to get stitching and that maybe you learned something or refreshed your memory on a little skill building. Once again, please like and subscribe for more. Consider signing up for my newsletter so that you don't miss anything. I have a monthly roundup of projects that I'm working on, as well as different links and coupons to my shop. So thank you so much and have a great day. Stay sewing.